If you were interviewing for a job, you could tell you can feed it the job announcement and say, "Hey, create some questions. I want you to quiz me on this interview prep and help me to improve." And it will ask you the exact questions that it needs to ask you to make sure you understand where your knowledge gaps are, right? Yeah, yeah, it's good, it's good, it's good. So let's talk about some practical, repeatable examples of things that you can do daily. Like if you work in an office, you work on a computer. You can ask it for morning briefs, right? Tailor news summaries relevant to your industry, right? That's I cannot tell you how important that is. So I'm in a role right in the credit union where I'm a, chief information officer, right? I have to constantly be aware of what's happening in the industry as it pertains to technology, especially cybersecurity, right? That's a huge, it's evolving every single day. I use AI to keep me up to date on everything that's happening in the industry so that I can process faster, so that I don't get caught off guard, right? Email drafting, kind of like what we talked about before. If you need to respond to an email a certain way. And what I love is a lot of the email browsers are now incorporating Gen AI into them, right? So where it'll give you a polished version of what it is that you're trying to say, right? I can't tell you, and Terry, I know you have too, man, over the years, how much time I've probably spent in my lifetime
Oh, yeah.
rewriting emails,
Yeah.
trying to make sure the grammar's perfect, right? That I'm hitting the right points, that the tone is correct, right? To try to get the right response. And now you can do it in seconds, right? I mean, I don't know if you want to touch on that at all in your experience.
Yeah, no, it's key, right? Here's the deal. Right? We all know that email is a gerbil hamster wheel, right? It's an inevitable, necessary evil in some sense, right? Because you could spend a quarter of your day, right, depending on your role in
Yep.
email.
Yeah.
Um, because that's how a lot of communication occurs, right? And the ability to turn that information around quicker, with the right tone, draft it to the right audience,
Yes.
um, and because you may have to send multiple emails on a certain topic and the
Yeah.
audience is different, and the ability to write it with the right tone, right? I'm going to send my technical email in a totally different tone than I send to my leadership email, right?
Right.
Or my internal email is going to be different from my external facing email if it's
That's
on the
right.
same topic, right? Because you're
That's
dealing
right.
with vendors, you're dealing with contractors,
Yep.
you're dealing with key stakeholders, right? All those things, right? If you're in a business or, if you're in an entrepreneur role, right? So
Mhm.
we're communicating to different people in different ways. And, one communication necessarily doesn't suffice. So the
Yes.
ability to turn that around,
Yes.
and to have it honed in to exactly what you're looking for to
Right.
communicate,
Right.
to get the desired outcome, that's the
Exactly.
key.
That is the key. That is the key. I heard this I was in a conference this week, and I heard this guy say this week, and it kinda blew me away. He was talking about ChatGPT's ability to respond to an email, and it said that ChatGPT has I think it's called DISC model, the profile model already built into it, and you can say, "Craft this email, according to this personality," right? And it will change the tone to what's most effective to that personality, right? This stuff can do things that would take you hours to try to figure out, and it can
For
do it in
sure.
seconds,
For
right?
sure.
So
For sure.
again, I always want to go back to, think about the employees on your job who are using this and the ones who are not. And who do you think is going to get promoted faster? Who do you think is going to get more opportunities, right? Because we're talking about tools that in some cases are free, right?
Correct.
Some of these email, Gen AI built-in pieces, like I believe is in Gmail, gives you the ability to craft this stuff for free. Like it's not something that you necessarily have to pay for. So, and I'm glad I brought that up. Not all these tools actually have a cost. Some of them are free. In order to get more advanced features, you have to pay. right? But
Sure.
to get in and start playing with there is no upfront cost for that,
Sure.
right?
And Ralph, I'm glad you brought that up too, right? Because each tool, just like an automobile, right? I'm a Honda guy, right?
Mhm,
And then I've kind of gone into the Acura line because that's still Honda, right? So you get a certain feel with the service, a certain feel with the car. So a few years back, my wife wanted an SUV. She's a Texan, so I think that's a way of passage, right? A
mhm,
truck or an SUV, you got to have one of those. And so we have a Suburban. I love riding in that Suburban. It is a different experience from the Honda, right, or
mhm,
the Acura line. Now, totally across the board from maintenance on the car, from the service model, all those things are different. Is one necessarily better than the other? No, I'm not necessarily saying that. The experience is different.
mhm.
So, in the same manner as we can think about different experiences with automobiles and different car lines, it's the same thing with these AI tools, right?
Good.
ChatGPT has a different feel than um, Google's Gemini, right?
Mhm,
Or Microsoft's Copilot. They
mhm,
all have a different feel. They all have a different level of maturity, right?
mhm,
Honestly. And so
mhm.
you're going to get a different outcome. I was working on something yesterday, Ralph, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to try this to see how it works. And so I brought up Copilot and I was making some calls out to some clients and so I had some different responses, and I wanted to keep a list on what I need to do to follow up. I'm like, I don't want to write this, so I opened up
Right.
Copilot. I'm like, hey, create me a list,
Mhm.
and after each call, I make my note, and I'm like, hey, I'm putting you back on mute. I'll be back. He was like, hey, take your time. Because
Nice.
I didn't want to write the list down. So,
Right,
you know how much time that saved me? Now I don't have to worry about going back and opening up my
right.
journal. So I use my journal here, and I'm just going to share it. Right. My journal has a total separate purpose now. Right. My journal is really designed when I'm in front of, I'm just having a conversation, right? Whether it's virtual, whether it's in person, the goal for my journal now is to capture the intimate things that the person's saying. I'm not
Mm,
writing down every
that's good.
single thing. In
That's
my
good.
journal, I'm noting that the person said, yes, the risk to my infrastructure is my greatest concern.
Yeah.
Risk,
Yes.
infrastructure,
Yes.
concern,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So now
Yes.
I can come back. So now that becomes a different data point for me. Now, granted, here's on the flip side of that. I got my AI tool capturing the meeting, right?
Come on, man. You got to. You have
And
to.
so I got the summary coming back, but what happens is I'm creating an anchor point for
Mhm,
myself. So when I
mhm,
do go back to my notes, I'm like, oh yeah, these are some anchor points. So when I follow back up with my customer, my
mhm,
client,
mhm,
I'm intentional about. Here's the thing: what's the most beautiful thing about having it in that setting? I'm not worrying about trying to remember everything.
oh my
Remember when
god.
we were in those meetings and you had
Yes.
to write it
Mm,
and with accuracy and you
uh,
had to remember the oh my gosh.
it was
The
now I can say it was terrible,
it
right?
was
Because I've been a OneNote user since 2007. You know,
correct.
hundreds, probably thousands now of
Yes.
meeting notes, that I'm trying to keep up with, and you doing shorthand just to try to keep up with how fast
Yes.
everybody
Yes.
is actually speaking. And
Yes.
and Terry, to your point, and that was the next thing we were going to talk about was these meeting summaries, right? That is a perfect use case for AI. It can do better than you can. Trust me. I don't care how good you think you are at taking notes. They say that it's impossible to mentally focus on two things at the same time. You can shift really quickly. You can mental shift really fast, but you can't think on two different things at the same time. And it's impossible for you to be trying to format and dictate your notes and really catch every single nuance that's happening in that conversation. And these tools do such a great job. Otter AI, Terry and I, we love to use Otter AI. Read AI, Copilot is built into Teams, so where it can record and transcript conversations. But to Terry's point, it completely frees you from, I would call it the mental chain of having to focus so much on taking the notes that you can't be conversational.
Yes, you can't be present.
You can't be
Yes.
present if you're trying so hard to not miss any note, right? And to Terry's point, I love the way you articulated that, right? Now I could just focus on anchor points, right? Things that just kind of really stood out. And then, review the AI generated summary at the end, right? And just add my own key points to it. So now a great example, fantastic use case. And we do want to say, right, disclaimer. You're supposed to let people know, right?
Yes.
Before you record them, right? Recording people in secret is not something that is something that's frowned upon. But it definitely it goes without saying that tool is invaluable, especially
Yes.
for a person like me. Sometimes I'm in 7 to 8 meetings a day, just back to back to back to back to back. By the time I get to meeting six, I'm having a hard time remembering everything that I committed to in meeting two. Right, but when you have these tools recording everything, and the beautiful thing about it, at least with Copilot, is, not only will it record the meeting notes, but it'll give you a section of all your follow-ups, the things that are committed to and who they're committed to in the meeting.
Correct.
So you know exactly what you walk away the responsibility you walk away from, and you can keep on top of your task. But, in an age where we're processing more information than ever, faster, 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 these tools, I like the way you put it, Terry, it supercharges you, right? It supercharges you and it gives you abilities to do things that you just couldn't do before. And another great use case is, and going back to Terry, what you said was a brainstorming partner, right? Man, that I'm trying to tell you, man, that to me, that may be the most valuable feature of Gen AI for me, because my what they call it, ideation process, man, it could have taken a week, to kind of process through certain topics because I don't have a whole lot of time, right? So I put a little time here, put a little time there, put a little time here, put a little time there. Man, I could sit down within 2 minutes and be completely done through the ideation process of a concept for me, right? And on my way to the next thing. So I'm able to process so much faster, right? Compared to, again, I always want to bring it back to this. Think about using this in this use case as compared to someone at your job who's not, right? What do you think is going to happen to the person who does versus the person who does not, right?
Right.
Always want to bring it back to that. And then a great thing is interview prep, right? People don't look at Gen AI for that purpose, but if you were interviewing for a job, you can feed it the job announcement and say, "Hey, create some questions. I want you to quiz me on this interview prep and help me to improve." And it will ask you the exact questions that it needs to ask you to make sure you understand where your knowledge gaps are, right? So that you can clean those up, so that you can articulate better, right? And then where your knowledge gaps are, you can dig into that. Well, help me understand this a little bit better. To Terry's point, it's like having a best friend. It's like having your own personal coach. Really, really is what it's like. But any thoughts on that, Terry?
Oh man, I got a lot I could share on that. So I don't talk much about that on here, but I probably will. So, many of you guys know that, I've been leading Lift Life Technology, and man, we went through a rebrand back in early spring, right? April timeframe. And leading up to that, man, I had just, I've been studying some things, and this one particular book I'd read called Inspire Your Buyer, and it was just great content. I'm like, okay, I got it. We need to create something that's easily understood, 4 words or less, all of our services. And I just, man, I went through this process. It was about a month, and just, different iterations and different, I mean, the ability to build out a framework, for a website to articulate what we wanted to communicate with all of our services. We had, 5, 6 core services. And so when I turned that information over to our web designer, the person shared with me, okay, your messaging is so concise. You don't really need to you don't need to say a mission statement, because in what you are articulating is so clear.
Mhm.
And I'd never heard that before, right? That you don't need to on your website say this is what your mission is, because what you want to do and who you're serving is so clear.
Mhm.
It's built in the body of what you're communicating. Now, I'd like to say I came up with all that by myself. But as we say, the assistant,
The assistant.
right? Now, here's what I brought to that, right? I brought the knowledge of what our service offerings were. I brought the breakdown of what those different target areas were. I
Mhm.
brought in who our ideal client profile is and
Yes.
how we want to assist them and um, be a trusted partner.
Mhm.
And so the prompts brought back for me, and here's one of the key things I had asked, right? If you guys ever go out to the site, I said, hey, take this concept and make it client physician friendly,
Yes.
right? I'm not using these technical jargon, right? Because if I write it, it's going to be IP and all these technical terms, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Now granted, the assistant is helping me, you know, frame better.
Yeah.
So now my dialogue is much better. To Ralph's point, right? I'm going on to the second point, Ralph, is I use the assistant for conversational exchange all the time,
Yes.
all the time. Sometimes it's just a conversation, right? Hey,
Mhm.
hey, you know what? Let's talk about this. Okay,
Mhm.
Terry, yeah, let's talk about it. And
Mhm.
then sometimes it's, hey, I want to practice on this.
Mhm.
I have this coming up. Help me. And it is a great, so I used to be like, hey Shamika, can you help me out? She'd be like, okay, you I'll
Yeah.
say this, Chat
Yeah.
GBT or Gemini, they're not giving me any time constraints.
That's right.
Babe, I love you, but
Right.
I
That's right.
love you. I
Yeah. Yeah.
love you
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
all my heart, because I know you have some long weeks and you are amazing at what you do. And
Mm.
but
Mhm.
now I'm like, hey, you know what? I'll go practice on the assistant, and then she gets the refined version now.
Yes.
She
Yes.
don't have
Yes.
to go to the iterative process.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
by the time when I get to her, she's like, "Oh, babe, you nailed it." I'm like, "You think so?" She was like, "Oh, you the man." I'm like,
That's right.
"Yeah."
Yeah. That's right. Yeah,
Oh,
man, I think it's important, man, to, like you said, Terry, in that ideation process, um, make it easy to you to get to the tool, right? So one of the things I did, Terry and I iPhone users. Um, there is a shortcut you can create for ChatGPT and for Gemini that puts a button on your phone, an icon on your phone that opens the app out directly to the voice prompt piece. So you could just hit this button and just start having a conversation. And you would be surprised as to how human, the
mhm.
voice and sound, the inflections of tone that they use to make it more natural conversation. Now, let's just set the record right. We're not saying that this is a person, and even though we talk about talking to it and getting advice from it or whatever, it is still a piece of technology, right?
Yes.
Because there's some people who are out there getting weird with this stuff. That's not us, right?
Yeah.
We not we're not
We
advocating for that. We are not advocating. We're not saying you get engaged to this thing, or all right. We are not advocating that.
No, we're not
We're
sitting
not.
with you and your pastor. I'm telling you right now.
No, no, man. We ain't get we ain't getting relationship advice from this thing, dog. Nothing like that, right? But
Mm.
it is a tool that can supercharge your career, your abilities, and your life. Um, so yeah, let's move on to the next section. So let's
Yes,
talk
sir.
about personalizing Gen AI, right? So whatever tool you use, ChatGPT, Copilot, Claude, Gemini, I know that you can give it custom instructions, right? Like to Terry's point, I set your tone to this, right? I want this to be a playful tone, or I want this to be a professional tone. You could tell it its role, and we'll get a little bit more into that in the prompt engineering section. Like, hey, your role in this conversation is an expert at this, right? And then it will take on the persona of that based on everything that is read throughout the internet, right? And then preface this. So, for instance, you could say, I am a project manager, respond in a concise and structured format. So now you're giving it some context as to who you are, right? And how you want it to respond to you. Again, this is where we start getting to using it efficiently. It's not Google. right? You so used to Google, you just type in what you want and then you get all these selections back. With ChatGPT, yes, you could type in what you want. It's going to give you a general response. But the more you frame the way you question it, right? And the way we call it, the way we question Gen AI is called a prompt. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Sovereignty Podcast. If this content blessed or helped you in any kind of way, support us today by subscribing to our YouTube channel, clicking the like button for this episode, and sharing this content with others that you think it will help. Until next time, stay safe, peace, and blessings.